everybody. Bob Chick back with David Bay. We're back with a special installment of TLR. Of course, the political after the race. We got a new president.
Oh, yeah, we do have a new president, and there's a whole lot of people who are very happy about it, a whole lot of people who aren't happy about it, and a whole lot of people that are going to get their head back on straight, put their pants on like they do every morning, and get back to work and try to live the best life they can and not worry too much about it.
And here's what's funny on that, David. I mean, honestly, how much does this affect your average Joe out there? Like, for 99% of the people, unless you're one of the few that it's going to affect, unless you're in some huge tax bracket or anything of that nature. I mean, whoever's sitting in president, I mean, was your life any different the last 4 years other than health care? Because Barack Obama was there.
I was, as many people know, the administrator at my brother's dental office, so I did handle taxes and payroll and stuff like that, and there was an increase in some payroll taxes and stuff like that. Nothing substantial. The healthcare thing was a complete mess, it was good for people who had pre-existing conditions, people in low-income brackets where they were able to get government subsidies for healthcare. But for the majority of Americans, and I'm not a politician, I'm not an expert, and so, but from my understanding, most people didn't really benefit at all from the healthcare law. And I'm not going to say there's not people who didn't, and I have friends who have pre-existing conditions. I have sleep apnea. So for me, if I were to go out and try to buy my own health insurance, aside from the marketplace or aside from a group plan with an employer, I would have a very difficult time prior to the ACA Act. If I were to go out on my own because of sleep apnea, it's almost a red flag and so would many bodybuilders, because it's almost an instant red flag for many plans. So it had its ups, but to really hammer home your point, no, I mean, like you said, if you're in a huge tax bracket, you're going to get breaks. If you really benefit from the Affordable Health Care Act, fine. But at the end of the day, we just got to do the best we can, and I think people's fears and stuff are just grossly unwarranted. We have a three-part government with the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, and I'm not sure people get that. They just, Trump's in, and now he's going to make it's not like this guy walks in and all of a sudden he says this goes. We have a House, we have a Senate. We have
right.
laws in place, and we have an organization in place where one person can't just walk in and turn the whole country upside down. Not that he would.
And even funnier was some of the rhetoric that you heard pre-election. Would you trust this guy with his finger on the button? It's like, there is no button. Okay, and what do you think? It's like the bat phone, like in the old Batman series, where you got the little glass case that you open up, and there's the red phone there, or there's an actual button there that you hit, and a nuclear bomb goes off. I mean, yeah, there are checks and balances. Speaking of which, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to cover here today with our special election edition here, David. This notion of rioting out there and protest. What is anybody protesting exactly? Like I'm a little lost on this one. What is the protest against?
The protesting is losing, and I think there's been memes floating around the internet the last 2 days. This is what happens when you have an entire generation of people raised on participation awards. They can't look, and I don't like losing at anything. I mean, any checkers, Monopoly, a game of Madden with my buddies. Some of the most heated, ugly arguments, me and my buddies playing Madden, because we're all the same mindset. We don't like losing. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think a lot of people are just pissed that they lost. Like, you're so sure that your person's going to win and the other person sucks, and when you lose, it's like you have to swallow your pride. But the protesting thing, it's like, I'm all for people going out and protesting. What's done is done. And for everybody saying he's not my president, yes, he is.
Yeah, he kind of is, actually.
Yes, as long as you're an American citizen, you don't even have to be a citizen, as long as you live in this country. He is your president. So you can put all your posts on Facebook that you want. It's not my president. Well, you know what? There's a lot of elected officials, and a lot of people that are in positions that represent people where it's like, I don't like them, but that's the way it is. The thing that bothers me the most about the protests is that you have an entire demographic of people who are just the entire campaign. We're throwing out messages of love and unity and understanding and acceptance. And so many of these protests are turning violent. And the ones that aren't turning violent, the rhetoric and the language being used is 1,000 times worse than anything that Donald Trump said along his entire campaign. The insults, the terminology, the just vile things that are being spewed from people who are unhappy about the results are so much worse than anything that Donald Trump said. And the hypocrisy among some of these people is mind-blowing. To me, at the end of the day, this was going to be a lose-lose for America. I was just on the phone with my dad. I said, you know what, Dad, I'm 37 years old. My first election I could vote for was in 2000, and I have yet to walk into a voting booth where I'm, this is who I, this is who I want. I'm really confident, and I think it was the same way for a lot of people. Like, look, most of my friends that I associate closely with tend to vote Republican. Okay, now mind you, most of my friends are also very socially liberal. They think drugs should be legal.
Right.
They should, most of my friends don't care if a dude wants to marry another dude. Like, that's just how we are. Those are the people that I surround myself with. But we tend to vote Republican because of fiscal policies and stuff like that. There's not a minute of this campaign where we weren't on the phone shaking our heads at the stupid shit Trump said. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember when the whole grab her by the pussy thing came up. I was just, I can't believe he said that. And it was 10, 12 years ago. And it's like, yeah, but it was on a radio interview. What was he thinking? But, at the end of the day, it's like, all this stuff and all the nonsense that got wrapped around this election, it made people forget, I think, sometimes that we had two really, really shitty candidates at the end of the day. And I know some people really love Donald Trump. And at the beginning of his campaign, I was almost sold a little because it's like, okay, I was, liking him for the same reasons everybody else was. Here's a guy who has his own money, so he doesn't necessarily have to, follow all the special interests and corporations and whatever. He says what's on his mind, and he's throwing political correctness out the window. I was like, yes. And then he starts going on with, I know more than all the generals.
Listen, I mean,
you did not say that.
Yeah, clearly.
It was, it was a lesser of two evils for a lot of people. And so it's like these people who are so mad and so angry, you got to understand, a lot of the rest of us are just happy that our person won, but we don't all of a sudden think like, it's ice cream cones and puppies for America.
Well, personally, I love the idea. Like to me, watching the election night was actually fun. It was fun for a lot of reasons. What was most fun was watching all the experts that were on TV who have blatantly just been wrong the entire time. And the look on their face when those first results came in, and it was not at all what they were expecting. Trump was winning here, he was winning there, he was winning here, and all of a sudden the look on their faces was priceless. And because they were screwed. I mean, right then they knew that they called this wrong the entire time. What it did shake up, and what I love, David, is what it exposed was the complete bullshit that's out there with these polls and these experts and these projections and things like that. Yeah. They were all complete garbage. And if you remember, about 6 months ago, right when Trump had you and all that, right before all the stupid stuff started. But he was saying some stuff, like they say, that people were thinking out, that he would say it out loud. And it's like, yeah, I agree, and absolutely, and all that. And if you remember his first rallies, he'd have some ungodly amount of people. There'd be 40,000 people there. And then Hillary would have one down the street, and she'd have 2,000 people there. And then the polls would come out, and it would say that Trump's losing by 8%, or something, 8 points. And it's like, whoa. And that's when he started to question, saying, wait a minute, how can this be? Like, how can I be that far behind when I'm seeing the numbers and it doesn't make any sense? And that's when it first started to dawn on people, I think, that, what he was saying in its context was true. Listen, was it a rigged election? Well, in the context of that kind of stuff, absolutely. And I think everybody got exposed for that. They had egg on their face. And a lot of experts didn't look like they really knew what they were talking about at the end of that night.
No, and it was funny because in the state of Wisconsin, I had sources that said, Trump won Wisconsin. And for an hour and a half on some stations, Wisconsin's undecided yet.
I know.
It's like they were waiting on it. And for the four big states, you had Florida, you had Ohio, you had Pennsylvania, you had Wisconsin, states that, we've seen a lot of Democrats win in the past. When those states started coming in as states for Trump, you could see on the faces of the analysts and everybody like that, and it's, you could tell by the tone of the most of the news media that they were really upset by things. And I've this isn't the first time I've said this, but I think the media as a whole, not bodybuilding media, we're a good crew of people.
Of course.
I think the media as a whole is filth. I think it's garbage, and I cannot overemphasize how much I dislike the media. I think they thrive on stories that are juicy and whatever, and they over embellish things, and they tell people lies, and they do whatever to further their own interest. And it's like, I personally, for me, I just don't like the negativity that the media spews. So, you'll have a case of police brutality, and it'll be on CNN, it'll be on NBC, it'll be on MSNBC, it'll be on CBS, it'll be all over. And you could have 1,000 cases of guys like firefighters and cops going out and saving people and doing good stuff. And you're lucky if you see it pop up on the local news feed, and maybe somebody shares it on your Facebook feed. The media in general, and I'm not even talking about the election, I'm talking about in general, the media sucks. And once it starts getting political, well, now you have a real shit show, because you have so many of them that are so far to the left, and the only balance that you have is Fox News, and those guys are so far to the right. And half the time you can't watch them either, because it's like they have to combat the people on the left, and it's like the American people are the ones left, sitting under this, just pile of garbage, and it's the media sucks, and they sucked this entire election. And it was nice to see that the American people got to see through some of the garbage that the media has been spewing at us for the last 16 or 18 months.
Well, David, some of the protesting out there, we'll use that term loosely, was centered around the fact that Hillary allegedly has won the popular vote. And I say allegedly because those numbers haven't even really come in yet, where it's so close that, it could have gone the other way even. But let's just assume
100,000, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's relatively, in the scheme of percentages, obviously, in the political sense, it's a dead even. That's dead even. As was, because obviously things can be contested, and dead people have voted. There's all kinds of wacky stuff going on. But let's just assume for this conversation that that's true. So much like Al Gore some years back, who won the popular but lost the election, and people say, well, I don't understand, how does that work? Well, and the easy short answer is, well, the Electoral College, which was set up years and years ago, and it was put in place for these reasons. And the big argument today, which has resurfaced, is why don't we scrap it? Why don't we just go with the popular vote? And there's a lot of reasons behind that. Listen, I'm not a big fan of the Electoral College, but it was put in place for a reason, and we don't have what they call a true democracy when it comes to voting.
No, we don't.
And the analogy you and I were talking a little bit before we got on the air that I gave you was like, in a true democracy, it'd be like, two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for lunch. It's like, well, clearly you can see where this isn't going to work, and it's not fair. And obviously, hey, majority rules, right? Well, you take that analogy and you put it into what we're talking about right here. First of all, the race would be pretty much selected by 2 states, maybe 3. California, New York, and we'll throw in Florida there for good measure. That's about it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, those numbers would render every other state in the union irrelevant. So when you say by the people, it's like, well, the majority of those states perhaps, but not certainly the majority. It would not represent the majority of the people that are out there as a whole in the United States of America. That's why the popular vote wouldn't work like that.
It's just an interesting debate, and when I don't have a good answer for a debate, I try not to argue either side. I try to recognize the point, counterpoint from each side. And in a true democracy, yes, whoever gets the most votes, you win. Which, by the way, Hillary wouldn't even be on the ticket if that were the case. It would have been Bernie Sanders. So right. You want to blame anybody for the popular thing in the Electoral College, and you want to point fingers, let's start with Hillary. But there's definitely a strong argument that made if they preach over and over, you make your voice heard, you have to go out and you have to vote. And so it's, I think you can make a fair argument, one person, one vote. But if you see the map of, and I've seen it multiple times posted over the last couple of days, about 50% of the United States' population lives in, I think, less than about 50 counties. And Southern California, Southern Florida, and New York, as you had pointed out, in a couple of the more metropolitan areas in Texas, are where the large majority of these populations are. And So yeah, you have a lot of states that go without a voice. I mean, Southern California has a higher population than you look at the entire, North and South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming,
Right.
Montana, all those states over there. Um, Southern California's votes, you could have LA and San Diego, their votes outweighed the sum
Yeah.
of five states. Now, on the flip side of that argument, somebody could say, well, just because there's, if there's 50 people living in Wyoming, they shouldn't have as much of a say as 5 million people living in California just because they're in a state. But should a state's voice be heard a little bit louder? I don't know. I think the Electoral College creates a mess, and I think the popular vote, just leaving it up to that, at the end of the day, it's like if you're talking democracy, the popular vote, might be the way to go. But like I said, when I'm in a position where I don't know enough about politics to lay out a solid argument for either side, I try not to have too much of a point because I try not to sound like any more of an idiot than I already know I am. But it is an interesting argument. And again, for the people who are saying like, well, Hillary won the popular vote. Yeah, well, as far as I understand, Bernie beat Hillary,
Yep.
and Hillary's own explanation. I'm fairly certain I've seen videos. I've seen so much political crap that I don't want to say I saw something and be Brian Williams and have people say, "Well, you saw something that didn't happen."
Right.
But I'm fairly certain I saw a video of Hillary just kind of saying like, "Well, this is the way our government is set up and always is.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to narrate how we should or shouldn't elect officials. I'm just here to run my
Right.
campaign." That was her reasoning behind why she should have, beat Bernie. And not that I would have, I'll go have a beer with Bernie Sanders any day.
Sure.
Same with Obama. I'd love to party with both those guys. They seem cool enough to do that. But so if you're talking about fairness as far as the voting system goes, you can't even make an argument right now for Hillary Clinton being president because she wouldn't have even been on the ticket. And we note that the election as a whole, and this is one thing you can't dispute, numbers are down for everybody. Okay, so all the people that are complaining that Hillary got killed or not by a landslide by the electoral votes, but she got this and that. Like, I don't know how it works as far as how many more popular votes affect the electoral college votes, but what I do know is that there were millions less people that voted for Hillary than voted for Barack Obama in the last couple elections. And so I question as to whether, okay, if it's a narrow margin of a couple 100,000, was that not enough to shift who won the electoral college votes? And had Hillary beat Donald Trump by a margin of a few million, would those extra votes have had any sort of impact on the electoral college? That's a question that I don't have the answer for,
Well,
but it's something that you can bring up, that just voting was down as a whole. Less people voted for Donald Trump than voted for Mitt Romney. And that goes back to my other point that the American people as a whole were like the old South Park episode, shit sandwich or giant douche. Which one do you want, America?
Well, and that's what it came down to. But you're right. Listen, lack of voters is what blew it for the Democrats. And I did follow enough to see those stats. Yes, it would have made a difference. It would have made a huge difference. Hillary probably would have won, more than likely. So they got nobody but themselves to blame for not coming out and voting. But in your own neck of the woods in Wisconsin, which they thought they had lock, stock, and barrel, was actually one of the more interesting stories because they never even came back to Wisconsin. Trump did, and he came back to try to turn the state and all that. The Democrats pretty much just forgot about it. Listen, we got Wisconsin, don't worry about it. We'll spend our time in other places. And all of a sudden, when those results came in, it was a landslide for Trump.
And for people outside of Wisconsin, it's a swing state, and it was a surprise to a lot of people. We have a Republican governor now. For you people outside of Wisconsin, I don't know how much of our news gets out to everybody else.
Zero.
The governor that we none. the ponies.
We know you got the Packers and you got cheese. That's about what you got, bro.
The governor that we have now in Wisconsin won on very hotly contested elections. They tried doing recalls, getting him, people hated the guy. He wanted to bust the unions. He wanted to break up a teachers union, and that was a huge issue. And people hated him, but when they tried to do the recall, he still stayed in office, and then he got reelected. So we have a Republican governor that's in the state of Wisconsin that's not liked by anybody literally who didn't vote for him. So to me, it wasn't that big of a surprise that Wisconsin also went that way. But again, watching the media say, "Oh, Wisconsin's going to be a blue state," well, we have a Republican governor that's been voted in the last couple of times. We have Senator Ron Johnson was a Republican last time who beat a guy who had been in there forever, Russ Feingold, as a Democrat. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't that big of a surprise to me, and I think it was a surprise to the rest of the country because they've been fed a bunch of bullshit, and that's no surprise.
No.
So one thing I would like to say about protesting, okay, and I didn't get my full thing out. If you want to protest peacefully, fine. If you want to cry and be upset and hold signs that he say "Not my president," fine. If you want to burn flags, it's disrespectful as shit, but it's your right as an American, and you know what? Whatever. It is illegal to stand in the middle of a highway, and if
Right.
you are standing in the highway as a form of protest, you deserve to get your ass run over. And if I need to get somewhere and you're in the middle of a highway, I will run you over. Because now what you start doing is you start interfering with other people's lives, whether they have places to be, jobs to get to, things to do. But on a more severe note, you are potentially intervening and causing problems for law enforcement officials, ambulances, fire trucks. If you block down a major freeway and a fire truck or an ambulance or a police officer, now your whiny, crying, I can't handle a loss ass might be preventing a fire truck from stopping a fire at a house, or somebody who had a heart attack my father had a heart attack earlier on in this year. He was taken by an ambulance to the hospital. I can't even fathom the anger I would have if my father had died in the back of an ambulance because a bunch of idiots were in the middle of the highway protesting something that this is, I mean, you can be upset all you want, fine, cool, protest, but don't do that shit. So if you're in the middle of the road, you know what, I'm going to go a step further. If you're in the middle of the road, I hope you get run over because it's natural selection and we just weed out one more of the idiots. Protest all you want, like I said, for as much as I disgrace, and I want to make this clear because I don't want to get any backlash, for as much as I hate the burning of the American flag, it is the people's right. Setting a piece of cloth on fire is their right. Is it disgusting? Yes. Is it, you know what, if you don't like it, I don't care how cliche this is, fucking go somewhere else.
Well,
but
interestingly,
don't stand in the middle of the highway. Don't stand in the middle of the highway.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, bro. I think those people should be killed. I mean, honestly, just run them over, get a big plow. I mean, seriously, like I don't really care. Honestly, in all seriousness, what they should do is that should be a seriously more serious levy charge. Don't make it some crappy ass little thing. They're going to make you disperse this and that. Look, like you said, that could have traumatic and very big problems. You know what I mean? Stemming from that you were in the way.
Something as simple as somebody getting rear-ended. What if your dumbass is sitting in the middle of the highway and somebody stops for you and the person behind doesn't have time to stop in time and they rear-end them and they got kids in the back seat of the car who just got mangled because your dumbass wanted to stand in the middle of a highway. You deserved, if you're going to stand in a highway, you deserve to be run over because you were an idiot.
And what's the means to the end here? I mean, by doing that, you're going to do what?
Well, I tell you what,
change the election process? Are we going to what is the problem?
What I'm reading now is that the Electoral College by December 19th or something, or by the inauguration, has the legal right to still say they want Hillary or something. People are trying to say that. Nothing's going to happen. It's like, look, I don't know how people's memories are so quickly erased, but there was a whole lot of people who didn't want Obama in 2008 and 2012. And when he got elected, And there wasn't a lot of people happy. And I don't know when the last election, all these elections are almost 50-50. When was the last time we had an election where it was even 60-40 or 70-30? You know what? These elections are close. So every election.
By the way, where were the riots when Obama got elected? The first or second time? Because I didn't see any.
People were very upset. A lot of people were spewing off a bunch of garbage.
I didn't see any riots.
No, there weren't any riots. There were idiots everywhere, but there weren't riots. And it's funny because I have friends who are, and this isn't me like being, well, I've got a black friend, so I can do whatever. No, I have good friends that are gay, lesbian, people that I hang out with on a regular basis, Republican, Democrat, liberals, left side, up, down, green, red, whatever color, okay? I don't base my friendship on any of that. But, you know, the thing is that these people are like trying to make it seem like guess I'm having a hard time coming up with the right words. These people are trying to make it seem like this whole country is going to just fall apart and it's going to be in crumbles now, and it's, oh my God. And the irony in all that is that the same people who are like so upset about this, it's like they keep complaining that Donald Trump was trying to run a campaign based on fear. Okay, well, he was based on a campaign based on fear. And now you got all these people saying, well, the stock market is going to crash. Well, the stock market didn't crash. In fact, it hit a record high today. It's going to start a nuclear war with Russia. Oh, actually, Vladimir Putin came and said he would like to, redo, or not redo, but try to reopen lines of communication. And it's, so all the things that people are saying now about how the world is going to fall apart, funny enough, the other side was saying about Obama. I remember people when Obama got elected, well, it's, we're going to go so far into debt, and then there's not going to be any more money because we're going to get blocked from China and the loan system or whatever, and then welfare is going to run out, and then it's going to be martial law, and then it's going to be the beginning of the end. Look, these shows, Doomsday Preppers, 90% of these people prepping are prepping not because they think there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or a volcano. They think there's going to be some sort of economic shutdown. And if you asked a lot of people after Obama got elected, they said he's going to cause an economic disaster where the whole country is going to be upended. And now here we are 8 years later, and the opposite side are saying the same garbage about Trump. It's not going to look. We're all going to be fine. People are upset. Are the laws that some people want passed going to pass? No. Are some, the gay marriage thing? Look, man, I'm as far to the left on this subject as you can. And my personal view is that just do what makes you happy, man. It's hard enough to be yourself in this world. Do what makes you happy, and nobody should have the right to tell another person who they should and shouldn't be able to love. And if I happen to love a guy and not a woman, then why should my right to enter a civil union or to share insurances or to have certain rights be violated? And to me, an issue that we have, and this is a hot button with a lot of people, is the man-woman thing goes back to the Bible, and it goes back to religion. And that's where it comes from. Everybody who has an argument against gay marriage cites the Bible, but in this country, we also have freedom of religion. So somebody doesn't necessarily have to believe the same thing you believe. They don't have to believe in the same God you believe in. Right. And we also have separation of church and state. So to me, marriage between a man and a woman, if a Catholic church wants to tell two men they can't come in and get married at a Catholic church, fine. It's a private organization. You can do whatever it is you want to do. But a government building should not be able to tell two adults that they can't enter a civil union. I don't care if you call it marriage. I don't care if you call it whatever, but I think people should have the same rights. And that's the one thing that that is a hot button that I sympathize a lot with the left on. Although my understanding is that Donald Trump didn't directly support it, and he said they're not going to do anything at a federal level, but it is my understanding that he said he's going to leave it up to the states. So it's not like – and on that topic, and you get me started.
And another thing.
Everybody's seen the videos of Hillary Clinton from 10 years ago. Oh, I believe marriage should be between a man and a woman. 15 years ago. Oh, you should be able to love who you want to love, but you shouldn't be able to get married. Hillary pulled a complete 180 on her stance on gay marriage. Okay? A complete 180. And if anybody thinks that was motivated by anything other than her own political agenda, get your head out of the sand, get it out of your ass, wherever you got it buried, because that's not the case. They have video. This isn't a quote that somebody made up. They have her video saying she doesn't support gay marriage, and they have her on video saying over and over again, over a time span. Now, as it became more accepted by the country, more accepted by the population of America, she changed her mind because she needed those votes, and she needed – imagine – let's – look at the landscape of this election and the issues people are voting on, okay? The issues people are voting on. Let's take everything and make it the same. but have Hillary say, I don't support gay marriage. Her entire campaign, the exact same thing,
Right.
but say, I don't support gay marriage. And Donald Trump runs his campaign the exact same way, but is a cavalier for gay marriage. What does that do to the votes on the left-hand side? Because the people on the right, look, nobody was going to vote Republican would have not voted for Donald Trump because he supported gay marriage. Because a lot of people, and I would say the majority of Republicans, aren't nearly as redneck or closed-minded as people think. They just are voting based on which person's fiscal policies they think are going to have a bigger impact on their personal life. Okay, but that's the thing, is that people are. Hillary Clinton completely flip-flopped her stance on gay marriage to gain votes. And when you go on campaign, or what's one or the other, it's one or the other. Or previously, she had lied and said she didn't agree with it because she wanted a different thing of votes. And it's so to me.
Either way, David. See, here's the thing with that. Either way, okay, it was whether it was you're lying then or you're lying now. You're lying either way. All right. The bottom line is this: it was absolutely for political votes and positioning and all that. This is where I have a problem with people that you would think. Of all things, listen, did Trump say some stupid stuff? Absolutely. We can all agree with that. All right? Tons of it. However, the core values of what he's talking about, forget about the garbage and, the stupid stuff with the chicks and all that. It's all junk. All right? The bottom line is this, is the core values of what he's talking about. And the idea that he's not a politician, I would think would be so attractive to people in this day and age. To get rid of the politics. Listen, nobody out there disputes that the Clintons, and I use that in plural form, from Bill to Hillary, were so deep in all the politics. I mean, as everybody says, there's too much politics in politics. Right. So now you have an opportunity. You got a guy who doesn't need the money, can't be bought with special interest, financed his own campaign. Clearly, he wants what's best, at least in his mind, for America and the people and all that kind of stuff. And he's actually brought up things that are so obvious, that have gotten so twisted in this whole campaign. That whole thing with the wall in Mexico was one of the biggest abominations of getting twisted I've ever seen. When he starts by saying, look, we've got a lot of infiltration from Mexico of illegals that are coming into this country, and some of those people are, whatever, rapists, and they're doing bad things, and, well, clearly, listen, these are people that shouldn't be here to begin with. These are people without jobs, without money, so of course a lot of them are going to go that route. He didn't say all of them. He didn't say he hates all Mexicans. He didn't say any of that stuff. It got so twisted right off the bat that people have lost the original premise of what he's talking about, which is listen, these are illegal aliens, okay? Illegal. That's the word. It's like, what are you people thinking, man? I mean, like, you don't understand that this is actually hurting you?
Yeah, the problem is, and again, this is one of those issues that I can dance both sides of the argument. And I actually had this conversation no more than an hour ago with my father. And my issue with the immigration issue is it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the giant effect on the system as a whole. People who are living this country and using our public goods and services and not paying taxes, the effect that they are having is huge, okay? If you're getting medical care, if you're using police resources, if you're driving on our highways and not paying state taxes or tolls to fix the roads, well, tolls you'd have to pay. Right. But you get the point. You're a burden to the system, and you're not contributing. You're only contributing to yourself. That being said, I do believe, people as a whole should have an opportunity to make a better life for themselves. And if they have a plan, if somebody wants to move here from Mexico and they get a good job within 6 months and they have a clean background,
sure. I'm all for that.
It's not like if you have a criminal background, you get kicked out of America. So I'm not saying if somebody's got a DUI or disorderly conduct, you can't come in. We're not Canada. But
no, we're not.
I think an issue that and Obama had 8 years to do it, and granted, with with dealing with congressional Republicans and all that makes it difficult. I would like to see a giant immigration reform. It's like if somebody wants to come to this country and be a participating member, not even if you make them a citizen, but say, hey, okay, you want to get a job here? You want to live here? Can you afford to live here? Yes. Are you going to be a productive member of society? Yes. Okay, cool. You got a job. You're going to work. You're going to pay your taxes. Come stay. When I was young, and this is a personal experience I have, and so many people base their voting off personal experience. And a personal experience I have is I worked with some Mexican guys when I was a waiter at TGI Fridays when I was 20 and 20 years old. There's a group of these Mexican guys work back in the kitchen. No offense, TGI Fridays, but I don't know. I think they were illegal, but whatever. I don't even know how that works. How you get payrolls, whatever. But the thing is, these guys came here from Mexico, and they had a plan. And the one guy I talked to, there was a group of 3 or 4 guys that lived together. They all had 3 jobs. They were living in a small apartment, not living it up. They weren't criminals by any means. These were good guys who had families back home. They had a 5 to 7 year plan to come here, work 3 jobs for 5 to 7 years. And these were guys who were working the 2 jobs, and their income from 2 jobs were getting sent back to Mexico for their families. Okay? So the income was getting sent back, and the other money they were making was going towards living here. Now, there's 2 sides of that argument, because you can say, well, now you have people in Mexico that are getting money from American employers where they're not even paying taxes. So Mexicans benefiting it, and they're screwing America. Yes,
we get the idea.
From a humanitarian standpoint, the immigration issue, I think it has to be. I think you have to have. I don't say you open up the borders and just let everybody in, but there has to be a way to make sure that the people who are getting into this country are contributing. And I'm not saying they're not contributing from a workforce standpoint, but they have to be paying into the system that the rest of us are, and not just coming here and getting free this and free that and free that and free this, and then having everybody say, oh, we should welcome you. I'm not against welcoming people in, And for the people wanting to move to Canada, big news flash. Canada doesn't just let everybody in.
Yeah, right.
It's not easy to just become a Canadian citizen and migrate to Canada. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to move to Canada, good luck.
Why don't they go to Mexico? I mean, that's wide open. I mean, that's speaking of which,
can't ask that question.
So obviously there was a whole bunch of celebrities, especially that were saying they were gonna, if Trump's elected, I'm gonna move. I'm out of the USA. Has one of them picked up a U-Haul yet, or a plane ticket?
None of them are moving. You know why none of them are moving? Let me tell you why none of these celebrities are moving. Because the reality of their situation is that they're likely going to have more money in their pocket with the Donald Trump presidency, because as the wealthy of the wealthy, they will probably keep more of their money. Those celebrities aren't moving. They're little kids throwing a temper tantrum. If I don't get cake for breakfast, I'm going to run away. And then guess what? You don't get cake for breakfast, and you walk out the street, you make it to the end of the driveway, and you turn around and come home because you realize you were full of shit in the first place. That's what those celebrities are doing. Nobody's getting up and leaving. And you know what? And it's like, this is the other thing that bothers me is the left side getting behind people like the Clintons and these celebrities. Do you realize that Hillary and Bill Clinton got more money in their bank accounts than probably the entire sum of the people that voted for them?
Oh,
it's like, well, of course it's an exaggeration. Don't anybody quote me on that. But you get what I'm saying. Like the people who actually, it blows my mind, the people who actually thought that this lady who's getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for speeches to giant corporations,
right,
she's looking out for you, my man. The Joe Blow plumber back in Idaho, Hillary, don't worry, Hillary's got your back. Like, oh, you're so delusional,
By the way, on that same note, so there's been 8 years of obviously Obama. And listen, there's target areas, a couple of which Donald Trump actually called out, like Flint, Michigan, and stuff. That they're still in despair. They're still, he actually told them at one point, and I love that when he actually went there and said, "Look, what do you people got to lose?" Basically, I mean, seriously, what do you got to lose? You're living in squalor. Your schools are garbage. You can't drink your water. The unemployment rate is an all-time high. That the place looks like somebody dropped a bomb on it. There's no housing. So now that's 8 years under the Obama administration.
And Detroit, mind you, has been a Democratic city for years and years and years.
Correct. Now, 4 more years of Hillary would obviously elicit nothing more. Actually, Hillary is the one who actually ponied up to saying that she was the orchestrator of Obamacare and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, listen, you're looking at 4 more years of the same. What he said was absolutely, I couldn't applaud anymore. It's like, what do you really have to lose? By making a switch and at least giving it a shot. I mean, listen, he ain't going to do any worse. They literally can't get much worse than where they are in some of these poor areas around the country. So, listen, I applaud that people actually did it, and they did say that a lot of the rural areas did vote for Trump. Obviously, you saw a lot of the maps obviously coming out on election night. But what I want to touch on, David, is switching gears a little bit. I saw a lot of video, and I got to be honest, I actually started laughing out loud at some of this stuff on election night. Some of the footage of some of the people actually crying when it was obvious that Hillary was going to lose, I actually thought was hilarious. And I don't mean to be completely heartless, but I got to be honest, bro. This stuff was just ridiculous. I mean, I get.
Yeah. No, it was. Look, it goes back to, it was temper tantrums. It was people that have been handed participation, their trophies, their whole life.
Well, wait a minute. Hang on. Let me follow up on that, because I wasn't really going there. What I'm going towards more is this idea and this notion that we wanted the woman president. All right, that was the thing, and even in Hillary's speech, and little girls out there and this and that, and keep your dreams, and everybody was hoping she'd become the first. Listen, did you just want a woman president to say we had a woman president, or was she actually just not a good candidate for the job?
She's just a shitty candidate for the job. Yeah, it's like,
exactly.
Look, here's the thing, and I'll stand by this. I think that theoretically speaking, in the primaries, if this was even possible, and I don't know how it would have been possible, I think that Michelle Obama probably could have beaten Hillary. And I take that back. I don't say I think Michelle Obama probably could have beaten Hillary. I know she could have. I am 1,000,000% confident that Michelle Obama could have came out and said, you know what, same shit as Donald Trump. Hey, I don't have a political background, but I've been hanging around for 8 years. You know what? I'm going to now run for office. Hey, Bill was in the office, and then Hillary ran for office. Granted, she was a politician.
At least she didn't have any baggage.
Michelle Obama would have done. A black woman would have done better than Hillary Clinton. The nation, so much of the nation just didn't trust her. And yep, she got the popular vote, but there's a lot of people that just didn't trust her. I think she was, she was smug. She was, she wasn't like the one thing you can't ever take away from Barack Obama is the dude, and it might be because he's reading off a teleprompter. But I know bad people reading off teleprompters, especially in the fitness industry. The dude was as smooth
polished
as you could get. He always had this upbeat demeanor. Yeah. He never seemed smug. He always had a witty comeback. He was an easy guy to like if you didn't disagree with his political standpoint. That's why I said, I'll be the first one to say it. I'll take Obama out for a beer tomorrow. I'm not going to vote for you, but I'll party with you because you seem like a pretty cool guy. And I think, I don't think it had anything to do with her being a woman. Are there people who didn't vote for her because she's a woman? Absolutely. It would be completely naive to say that. But I think people just didn't vote for her because she's just kind of wretched, And I mean, she's just comes across to me as just being like miserable, And they had some video clip come out. Well, I haven't actually driven a car myself since 1996. And it's like, yeah, because you've been carted around in limos and
right.
How does that resonate with the people where you haven't even driven your own car? Now, granted, somebody could come back. Well, she lived in big cities, public transportation. As you see, Bob, I always have two sides of most arguments.
I see that there. You debate yourself, actually.
But it's
you're self-debater. Is what you are.
Just that there's such a disconnect between her and the American public as a whole, I think. And I tell you what, but I tell you what about people crying and stuff. And it's like I hate losing, and like I said, I hate losing more than anybody. But I think the people who were crying, were mad because they lost. It's like any intelligent individual, okay? And this might push some hot buttons, and it's going to happen sooner or later. Anybody who actually knows what's going on knows that Donald Trump isn't just going to walk into office and the whole nation's going to hate each other. I made a big, long post on Facebook, and I try to stay off political stuff. And, we just said, to hell with it. We'll wing it. We'll have some fun with this. I'm sure you and I will get blowback from the fitness community and from the forum members. But, I made a big, long post, and I said, here's the bottom line of this situation for the people who are worried about the hate language and the talk. Yes, it has a platform now, and I understand where you're coming from. But good-hearted people who teach their kids to be kind to each other, who teach empathy and love and unity, they're not going to all of a sudden come November 9th start teaching their kids something different. And on the flip side of that, people who are racist and bigots and the ones who are truly homophobic and don't like that stuff,
they weren't going to change if Hillary got elected. It wasn't going to be some big campfire hug session if Hillary got elected. The way we treat each other, and that's the thing is like people were crying. I saw people saying, I'm crying because I'm scared that our children have to grow up in a country filled with hate. Well, guess what? That starts with the people, and I don't care how cliche that sounds. It starts with the people. And electing Donald Trump, yes, I tell you one thing about I've seen plenty of redneck people and the people that are truly racist and stuff. They're flying their flags real high and they're gloating. And so, yeah, they're making the rest of us look bad. But those were the people who, honestly, had Hillary got elected, they'd have been doing the same thing. And it's not just like this nation.
Talk about the hypocrisy, though, David. Where's the hate coming from right now? It's coming from those people.
I've tried dancing the middle line, and I've been called names. And I have people that I'm good friends with that I know are good people. I had some people private message me their private messages, and it's like, like I said earlier, the things people are saying to people who voted for Donald Trump are 1,000 times worse than anything. You know what? I've been called a redneck, a racist, a homophobe, all those things. And it's like, I'm none of at all. And it's like, that's the problem. These people who were preaching a message of love and hate or of love and unity and whatever, are now the ones just spewing vile garbage, violent protests.
Well, they were preaching all that until they lost.
In the words of Rocky Balboa, the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a mean and it's a nasty place, and it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. Those are the words of Rocky. That's the reality of the world that we live in. Not everybody wins. Life isn't fair. But you accept things as they are. Now, granted, I'm not even saying people on the left should just, if you want change, go make change. Write your congresspeople. Write your senators. Try to get people to change the Electoral College if you believe that the Electoral College should be gone. But in 2020, when the person who doesn't win that you want to win, things don't go your way, you can't backtrack and then, this time this happened or whatever. You know what? You got to stick by your, guns and stick to your guns. And I think that people are just being sore losers. And I know we got to wrap this up pretty soon. We got a couple of actual bodybuilding things to talk about this.
Yeah, we'll throw it in at the end, But on that final note with that, David. Stephen Smith went off on this big time this week, but so Colin Kaepernick did not vote.
And he can sit here and I didn't think my vote was going to count, and then see the popular vote didn't count, so why do it? But yeah, it seems pretty hypocritical when he's trying to make a message of, we need to have change, and I'm going to be, this cavalier for getting. And he did start a big movement. There was a whole lot of teams that followed suit, all the way from professional to college to high school and down. So for him not to go out and vote and have his voice heard in that manner, I'm a little bit hypocritical. I'm going to wrap up what I have to say about this election and saying this. Look. The next 4 years, the next 8 years, the next billion years, we all have to live together. And regardless of what your beliefs are, when you wake up each morning, you have the option of either being a dick to people or being nice to people and treating people with respect. And what benefit does it bring to your life whatsoever by being mean and being hateful and being rude to other people based on anything? On anything. If somebody's going to vote different from me, does it make my day any better to be rude or mean to that person? If somebody's got different color skin, if somebody wants to go on a dude wants to go on a date with another dude, what possibly can I bring to my life? How would my life ever benefit from being mean or hateful or hurtful to other people? And this just isn't election stuff, but obviously this is the discussion right now. And it's like, so to the people who voted for Trump, you know what? Congratulations, he won. You know what? The change you were looking for, you got. But, don't be running around like a bunch of idiots and insulting people. And the only way that's going to stop is if the people on the other side, start practicing what they preach too. And it's like I said, you wake up in the beginning of the day, you can be nice to people. It's going to help some people sleep better at night. Some people don't give a shit because they're just lousy people. But, this election doesn't define America, regardless of what people think. It doesn't define our country. It doesn't. It doesn't define the people of this country. It doesn't define
whether we're a country full of hate and racism and bigotry or anything. Because there's a lot of people that voted on a lot of issues other than just that stuff. And so I guess this is a little bit hippie and a little bit tree huggy, but you know what? Just yeah, like I said on Facebook, copy Bill and Ted. Just be excellent to each other. Go on, live your life. Try to do the best you can for you and your family and your loved ones, and let other people do the same. Let people live and let live, man. Live and let live. And I'm not an overly sensitive person, and I'm not a bleeding heart, or I'm not anything like that. But it upsets me a lot to see how many people go out of their way to try to make other people's days lousy, and it's like I hate seeing it, and so I hate seeing it over something like an election that shouldn't change how people feel about each other. So
well, you're right about all that, David, and none of that defines the people. The people define the people. Their actions. It's that simple. So with that kumbaya, we'll draw the curtain on this year's election. Obviously, we'll continue this on the boards. I'm suspecting a thread will pop up anytime now.
Yeah, guys. Look, guys, when we and I'm going to have to monitor this. Okay, so for the guys, this TLR is going to go up on our social media. It's going to go up on our website. It's going to go up everywhere. And the social media on Facebook gets hard to monitor because we get thousands and thousands of comments. But to you guys that are on the boards and stuff, we all know each other, and we're a little bit of like this weird dysfunctional family.
Right.
So for as civil as we can keep it on MD, try to keep your discussion civil when this thing hits the boards.
Yeah, that would be nice. So closing that book. We have
got a little bit of bodybuilding news,
Yeah, slow week this week, but that's okay. The season's slowly coming to an end. We got the Nationals coming up next week, obviously, and what we'll do is we'll come out with next week's TLR a couple days earlier so we can do a Nationals preview before we get there, try to get some of the top names discussed and what's at stake. A lot of pro cards going on at this Nationals. As we know, we could talk a little bit about that. Big shout-out. The captain himself, John Lindsay, his birthday today. So happy birthday to the captain.
Happy birthday to John.
And I'm going to segue right into that. He's got a big show out in Culver City this weekend. And one of the names making a splash is a new guy on the scene, David. That's,
I'm excited.
Making his long-awaited debut. Tell us about it.
Callum Von Mulger. You guys might remember Callum. He's been on the couple of MD a couple times. First graced the cover in March of 2014. He's this Australian kid. People were talking. He's the next Arnold. 6'2". Looks like a model. As cool of a dude as you could ever imagine. I had a chance to hang out with him in Australia, go to his hometown, train with him at a couple of gyms and stuff. You guys can still see our training videos if you look up Callum Von Mulger, MD, on YouTube, or do a search for it on MD. But Callum is, he's in his mid-20s. Like I said, he's a very, very complete bodybuilder. He won the Junior Universe, I believe. He won the Mr. Universe twice. So he's done about as good as he can do in every other bodybuilding division aside from the NPC and the IFBB. So there's been a lot of questions to Callum. He's been weighing on that the last couple of years. I'm going to try to get him on an interview for my new show, All Access, whether it be before this weekend or to talk to him after. But it's an interesting. It's going to be interesting because, from my understanding, Callum is entering classic physique. Now he is a big guy.
Yeah.
He is very big. So I think he's going to be pushing the weight limits. But he's, even after they came out with Classic, there was still a question, how does he fit in? Because he's still almost, to me, a little bit in between Classic and bodybuilding. Although when you look at him, he looks very reminiscent of one of your throwback guys. So, this Classic physique division, for as much as I kind of cringed watching some of the posing as an amateur level or at the amateur level earlier this year, is really starting to take off. I couldn't have been more happy than to see Danny Hester win the first Olympia. But somebody like Callum, who is already famous worldwide, to have him in the IFBB, which I don't doubt that he'll end up getting a pro card. I don't know if he's planning on
doing nationals. I don't know what his immigration.
Correct?
Yeah, I don't know what his immigration status is, whether he's got American citizenship or not. But if he does have to earn a pro card in Australia, I'm sure he can manage that. But we're all going to be watching it because he's one of these guys that he was one of these what if guys over the last couple of years. What if he decided to, try to compete as a bodybuilder in the NPC while he'd have to put on, he reminds me a lot of Frank Seppi actually from NPC News Online. A lot of you guys know Frank. Tall guy, good looking. A full head of hair,
Right.
a full head of hair. But
hang on a second, Dave. Let me get myself. There we go.
For as big as Frank was, and Frank used, for you guys who've seen him recently, you don't remember him back in the day. Frank used to be huge, but he was so tall and he was working on such a big frame that he still needs to be a little bit bigger.
Right.
And I think that's the issue that Callum's going to run into because he's 6'2" or 6'3". People are always going to want to see him be a little bit bigger. But he wants to keep that old school look. He likes that. I've talked to him in extent about that. So I think as long as he can make weight for this classic division, he could end up being a big star. I don't know that he's got quite the V-taper or quite the flow of maybe somebody like a Danny Hester.
Sure.
But then who does?
Well, nobody, because Danny's the reigning Olympia champ. But exciting to see Callum on there, and we'll be watching that one closely.
Yeah, we're definitely, like I said, if we don't get a chance to talk to him before the show, we're definitely going to talk to him after. So look for that. We're going to get Callum on.
Well, in that same division, the weights have been upped in the pro side. For those who don't know yet,
Huge
this
news.
is something that we discussed throughout the year. I was of the opinion that they needed to go up about 5 pounds. Based on some of the physiques that I knew and I was familiar with, it looked a little bit light to me. In some of the physiques that I thought they looked more like a Durham Charles is a great example, where I thought he looked more classic when he was bigger in a bodybuilder than, kind of a more stringy version of what we see now. So I think that will greatly help not only Durham, but a lot of the bodybuilders into the pros. The amateurs is not moving, for those who don't know. We wanted the difference between the amateurs. You need to go somewhere. As a pro, you need to be able to bump up.
Room for progress, absolutely.
Correct. You need some room for progress. You need to bump it up. And I think, that will define itself, obviously, this coming year. There are some other things on the table, which we'll be discussing at the upcoming Nationals. I'm not a big fan of the shorts, as you all know. I'd like to see us actually make a transition, or at least an option, for the thicker cut trunks, the Arnold style.
I would definitely like to see a thicker cut trunk, and I think everybody would. And I don't think, when they had announced that they were going to do the 11-inch shorts, I didn't really. I thought it was a good idea, and I thought, okay, this will work. I get it. You can still see the thighs, but what you end up losing is the quad sweep, especially that up quad sweep where it dives into the hips. So a lot of guys aren't getting a chance to show off their legs. Guys like Danny Hester, real early in the year, Danny got away with wearing some of the more 70s style trunks,
which looked a lot better, by the way. If you look at those pictures, that to me is proof positive. You look at those and you go, man, it's not even close. Let's go to that thicker cut. Again, that's my suggestion. I'm one voice of many in the pro league, so we're going to see where that kind of goes this year. Also, I'm not opposed to colors. I mean, even though pictures are in black and white from the old days, there actually were colors back then. I don't know why we'd have to just stick with black, but listen,
a little bit more of a freedom of expression, I guess.
Open it up to the rainbow, man. Let these guys wear some colors, bring a little life into this thing. But listen, these are small little things. The division itself is a great success. Like I say, Callum Von Moger this weekend will be making his appearance in Culver City for all those shows. And as everybody knows, John Lindsay has been running in California for many, many years now. But my good friend Tamer El-Gindi has been is actively running the state for John. He's been put in the position to carry it into the future. He's done a great job out there with his brother and the rest of the crew, Shirley, out there. He's got a whole team in place. All that information can be found at musclecontest.com on this show coming up this week, as well as all the rest of the shows throughout the year. The new weights that have been established and all the rules and all that kind of stuff, you mentioned earlier, npcnewsonline.com. Our good friend Frank Seppi running things over there. He does a great job of keeping everything updated. But for all the new rules or old rules or any changes, that's where you can go and find them. The schedule came out. We'll get into that on the next show, David. The 2017 schedule is out. You can find that at npcnewsonline.com as well as ifbbpro.com, which has the brand new schedule that's come out. A lot of shows on the schedule, And again, we'll cover that a lot next week on the show.
One question to wrap things up, Bob, while we're on the topic of the extra 5 pounds. And this was the first thing that came to my mind. When they added those extra 5 pounds, does this now entice other bodybuilders that were competing in the open to possibly come down to classic physique? The guys like Brandon Curry, who openly, I will admit, I said he would never make 212, but I don't know what he had.
He can make 212.
Yeah, I don't know where's the. I'd have to look at the sheet, but I don't know what the height weight cutoff is for, and that's actually an interesting thing to look at too. Like because I think if you were 5'10", you could be 205 pounds. So I think now you can be 5'10" and maybe 210. I think it is.
Yeah.
I know my math sounds
Something
really.
like that.
But if you're talking some guys who are the taller guys thinking, and 5'10" is really tall to be competing in the 212 division.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be a thinner line between some of the taller 212 competitors and the classic physique competitors, and I'm wondering if we're gonna see a handful more guys switch from either 212 to classic or from the open to classic with this extra 5 pounds.
Well, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Any names that you see that could jump?
I think there's a whole bunch of names that could jump, and I think we will see with that 5 pound. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot when you're talking pure muscle and sucking it down to get to that weight. And more importantly, like I say, what kind of physiques are we seeing? To me, and this is why, again, I was very much outspoken when it came to bumping these up. Again, we all get that the first year was put in place to get it going and all that. That's fine. Making adjustments along the way. I'm not seeing the kind of physiques that I was hoping to see. For the most part, and again, few exceptions to that rule, but I think we're going to see much better physiques with that 5 pound increase, David. Like I say, we'll put on the next show, which we'll do, like I say, early this next week before the Nationals, before we get out of town. We'll put up that graphic on the show here that you can actually see it, heights and weights. That'll give us a little bit better perspective and whether a Brandon Curry or somebody like that could make that jump. So lots to discuss next week, David. Nationals coming up. I'm actually off to Denver, Colorado tomorrow. Jeff Taylor's show this weekend. The Mile High out there. A great show. So for anybody in the Denver area, come on out. Mr. Olympia Phil Heath, that's his hometown. So he'll be there in attendance along with a lot of IFBB superstars. But that's going to wrap things up for this political installment, David, of The Last Rep. So appreciate the comments and the back and forth. Obviously, we'll continue it online this week, but that's going to wrap things up for this week. For David Bay, I'm Bob Chick. We're out.